You sit in rooms with people who speak with absolute confidence about things they know nothing about. You try to use logic, you present facts, and you exhaust your own mind trying to make them see reason, only to be met with arrogant stupidity. You think your intelligence requires you to educate them. You are wrong. Every time you argue with a fool, you legitimize their delusion and drag your own status down into the mud. The most dangerous strategists in history never argued. They executed. This moment is your fork in the road. You either keep donating your mind to people who misuse it, or you learn the formula that lets a fool bury himself while you remain perfectly still. The system trained you to believe every false statement is your emergency. Every lazy opinion became your burden. Every loud, incompetent person became your unpaid project. That is why you feel exhausted, not because fools are powerful, but because you keep rescuing them from the consequences of their own ignorance. That is the forbidden question nobody gave you permission to ask. What if every time you correct someone's ignorance, you are actually saving them from the failure they deserve? That is how bad power dynamics work. The reckless speak, the disciplined react. The loud drain the competent. The fool throws chaos into the room, and you, thinking you are being noble, rush in to clean it up. This is not virtue. In many cases, it is surrender. In dark psychology, the bait is rarely intelligence. The bait is your need to prove that intelligence exists. That is the hook. That is how they get your time, your attention, your nervous system, and sometimes even your status. So this is what you are going to learn. You are going to learn a Machiavellian strategy built on the power of silence, tactical agreement, and ruthless non-participation. You are going to learn manipulation defense that does not require shouting, explaining, or begging reality to matter. You are going to learn psychological warfare without chaos, without insults, and without wasting your life in debates with people who feed on reaction. By the end, you will know how to deal with stupid people by stepping out of their theater and letting their performance collapse under its own weight. If these ideas resonate with you, hit that subscribe button for more top-tier content. Also, drop a "let them sink" in the comments so I know you're ready. Let's dive in. Your first mistake was believing that truth automatically wins in public. It does not. In public, perception moves faster than truth. In public, the audience reads energy before it reads evidence. In public, power dynamics decide who looks solid and who looks shaken. That is why, when you argue with a fool in public, the audience cannot tell who is who. They do not see two minds. They see two people emotionally entangled. And the moment you enter that entanglement, your status begins to bleed. You were taught that correcting error is a sign of intelligence. But Machiavelli knew something colder. He knew that not every battle deserves your presence. He knew that a ruler who reacts to every provocation trains the room to control him. You were taught that good people clarify. But Machiavelli understood that constant clarification can look like weakness, especially when the other person is shameless enough to keep speaking after being exposed. A fool does not fear contradiction. A fool survives on it. Your correction gives him a stage, an enemy, and the appearance of importance. This is why incompetence feels contagious. You enter the exchange clean and leave irritated, repetitive, and dragged below your level. You start simple, then you over-explain. You bring facts, then examples. You lower your language so they can follow. You repeat yourself. You defend what never needed defense. Before long, you are no longer displaying intelligence. You are displaying investment. And investment is readable. People can smell when you need to win. The fool feels it too. You cannot cure stupidity, but you can definitely weaponize it. That sentence changes everything because it moves you out of the fantasy that every broken mind is waiting for your wisdom. Some people do not want truth. They want attention. Some people do not want clarity. They want a reaction they can turn into a performance. Some people do not want to learn. They want to see whether they can pull someone sharper than them into the swamp. This is basic dark psychology. The trap is not the argument. The trap is your identity. You see yourself as the person who sets things right, so they keep creating wrongness and letting your compulsion do the rest. Stop for a moment and calculate the energy you waste trying to fix minds that are profitable only when they remain broken. How many meetings have you left with your pulse elevated because someone more confident than competent hijacked the room? How many family gatherings have been ruined because one loud person confused volume with insight? How many online exchanges have stolen an hour from your life just because your standards could not tolerate seeing nonsense go unchallenged? That is not strength, that is unpaid labor for chaos. But simply staying quiet is not enough. If your body language shows frustration, they still win. Here is how to fix it. The deeper problem is not the fool. The deeper problem is the rescuer inside you. You were conditioned to believe that competence must be generous. You were rewarded for helping, smoothing, explaining, translating, and carrying. You became the person who could see the flaw before everyone else. So naturally, you also became the person expected to repair it. That conditioning follows you into adulthood. Now every arrogant mistake looks like an invitation. Every ignorant claim feels like a duty. Every bad idea pulls on your conscience. But here is the ugly truth. In the wrong environment, your helpfulness becomes a delivery system for other people's irresponsibility. Your desire to be right is the leash the idiot uses to drag you down. That is why the forbidden question matters. What if every time you correct someone's ignorance, you are saving them from the failure they deserve? What if your explanation keeps the incompetent employee from exposing his incompetence? What if your polished response saves the arrogant friend from looking foolish in front of the group? What if your emotional effort protects the reckless boss from the consequences of his own vanity? You call it clarification. Reality calls it rescue. This is where manipulation defense begins, not with aggression, with refusal. Refusal to subsidize confusion, refusal to lend your mind to people who use it like a crutch, refusal to enter power dynamics already rigged against the person who cares more. In many situations, the fool is not beating you with intelligence. He is beating you with shamelessness. He is willing to look ridiculous for 10 full minutes. You are not, so you rush in to stop the scene. That rush is your weakness. That rush is what must die. You were taught that maturity means endless patience, but a sharper reading of dark psychology reveals something else. Endless patience with the committed fool is often disguised self-betrayal. The system needs you over-explaining because a person busy correcting everyone never builds a throne. A person addicted to proving points never becomes untouchable. A person constantly dragged into low-level conflict never accumulates the calm gravity that real authority requires. So your first act of strength is not speaking better. It is needing less. Needing less agreement, needing less recognition, needing less to be understood by people who are invested in not understanding. The moment you no longer need the fool to admit you are right, half the battle is already over. The leash falls, the room changes. Your nervous system begins to realize it has another option. If someone is committed to walking off a cliff, your only job is to get out of the way. That sounds cruel only to the part of you that was trained to mother chaos. In reality, it is strategic mercy. Consequences educate harder than lectures. Humiliation delivered by reality lands deeper than any sentence you could construct. And once you stop rescuing, you start seeing something shocking. Many loud people are one uninterrupted monologue away from ruining themselves. They do not need opposition. They need space. Now you are ready for the shift that changes your status in every room you enter. There is a version of you that still walks into the room like a participant. That version can be provoked. That version can be baited. That version hears nonsense and immediately leans forward, ready to intervene. You need to replace that version with the spectator, not a passive victim, not a frozen people-pleaser, a spectator with rank, a silent king watching a jester perform. This is the power of silence when it is used correctly. Silence is not absence. Silence is pressure. Silence is a mirror. Silence is the refusal to help someone hide from their own mind. When you stop interrupting, stop correcting, and stop supplying the missing logic, you force them to live inside the structure of what they just said. Most people cannot do that for long. Their contradictions start colliding, their exaggerations expand, their confidence outruns their coherence. Silence is the ultimate psychological mirror. It forces them to look at their own incompetence. But your silence must be clean. If your jaw tightens, they still win. If your eyes roll, they still win. If your face announces contempt, they still get proof that they have reached inside you. The power of silence is destroyed the moment your body starts arguing for you. So slow everything down. Relax your mouth, drop your shoulders, keep your breathing steady. Hold eye contact for one calm beat longer than normal, then release it as if nothing important just happened. This is not a stare of challenge. It is a gaze of complete non-urgency. There is a specific type of eye contact that will make a loud, arrogant person stutter and lose their train of thought. It is the look of someone who is not threatened, not impressed, and not available for recruitment into the performance. The greatest insult to an arrogant mind is absolute, terrifying boredom. That is why boredom must replace irritation. Irritation feeds them. Boredom starves them. Irritation says, "You have reached me." Boredom says, "You do not qualify as an event." This is psychological warfare at its cleanest. No insults, no escalation, no drama, just a quiet removal of energy. In dark psychology, attention is the currency the manipulator needs most. Your withdrawal is not weakness, it is economic collapse. Notice what happens next. They start speaking faster, they repeat themselves, they try to sharpen the point, they increase the volume, they check faces in the room for validation. They search for friction because friction would prove they matter. And you give them none. This is not an accident. This is Machiavellian strategy. Your disengagement is your most powerful engagement. Your stillness becomes the frame around their instability. Your calm becomes the evidence that they are alone in their own storm. Machiavelli understood that a person often reveals more when not opposed. Opposition makes people defend. Space makes them expose. That is why the next move feels counterintuitive, but it is lethal in the cleanest possible way. In stage 4, you will learn the tactical agreement. It sounds absurd until you see what it does. Most people think victory means contradiction. In reality, one of the sharpest forms of Machiavellian strategy is to let a foolish person feel unopposed long enough to overcommit. Tactical agreement does not mean endorsing the lie. It means removing resistance so the speaker accelerates into self-exposure. Sometimes that agreement is not verbal at all. A small nod, a neutral face, an open posture, a silence that says, "Continue." That is enough. This is the moment many intelligent people resist because they think any sign of allowance is surrender. It is not. It is setup. You are not validating the fool. You are handing him more rope and stepping back from the knot. The audience expects debate. Instead, they witness extension. The arrogant person takes extension as permission. And once permission is felt, ego does what ego always does. It reaches further than it can support. Machiavelli understood this from court politics. He knew that vanity becomes reckless when it thinks the room is safe. That is why tactical agreement works. The fool, believing he has seized control, starts filling the silence with more claims, bigger claims, sloppier claims. He adds detail nobody asked for. He makes predictions. He exposes motives. He reveals resentment. He contradicts himself because no one is interrupting him fast enough to save him from himself. You are not attacking. You are allowing gravity to work. This is manipulation defense because it stops you from becoming the unpaid editor of someone else's stupidity. It is also advanced dark psychology because it uses the target's own hunger against him, not through cruelty, through non-interference. The same way a bad poker player destroys himself when you stop warning him, a loud fool destroys himself when you stop correcting him. You were taught that silence is empty. But Machiavelli knew silence can be engineered. Silence can steer. Silence can raise temperature without a single word. Silence can force the impulsive to chase themselves into exposure. This is why the power of silence is feared by people who rely on noise. Noise needs opposition. Silence gives it an echo chamber. There is a critical rule here. Never smirk, never celebrate early, never let your face announce that you see the trap closing. The moment they suspect observation, they become cautious. Your expression must remain almost generous, almost patient, almost curious. You are not a rival. You are a wall without friction. Let them keep running. And then something strange begins to happen. The room starts doing your work for you. Other people notice the contradictions. Other people exchange glances. Other people feel the second-hand embarrassment. You did not force the collapse. You simply refused to interrupt it. That is status elevation through non-participation. That is how to outsmart anyone who survives only by dragging you into low-level chaos. But a fool in a room is only one theater. There are others. Work, family, social circles, public settings where one wrong reaction can make you look just as small as the person provoking you. That is where this becomes a full system. Hand them the shovel and watch them dig their own grave in total silence. At work, this matters more than anywhere else, because professional environments reward composure long before they reward correctness. If you work under an incompetent boss, this is the only strategy that guarantees your survival while accelerating their downfall. Do not publicly rescue their bad idea just to prove you are smarter. Public correction often makes insecure authority double down. Then you become the problem. Instead, let the instruction fully reveal itself. Protect yourself quietly. Keep records. Stay inside policy. Do not create failure. Do not lie. Do not sabotage. Just stop cushioning incompetence with your constant interventions. When results arrive, let results speak. That is real psychological warfare. Clean, controlled, non-reactive. You are no longer fighting personalities. You are letting reality take testimony. In social settings, the same rule applies. The loud friend who dominates every dinner with half knowledge does not become wiser because you challenge him after the second drink. He becomes louder. He mistakes resistance for relevance. So withdraw the relevance. Look away, take a sip, ask nothing, offer nothing, let the silence stretch. Watch how quickly he begins to overperform to fill it. He starts reaching. He starts embellishing. He starts revealing his insecurity to everyone except himself. The room sees it. You do not need to narrate it. Online, the principle is even harsher. Most foolishness on the internet survives because intelligent people keep feeding it structured replies. You think you are dismantling nonsense. Often, you are simply giving it oxygen. The fool screenshots your paragraphs and calls it victory. Never argue with fools in a place where the crowd consumes conflict like entertainment. That is their arena. Starve the arena. Leave the post unanswered. Let absurdity stand alone until even its supporters can hear the hollow sound. You cannot cure stupidity, but you can definitely weaponize it. And here is the deeper reason this works. The average fool believes two things at once. First, that he is smarter than he is. Second, that your attention proves it. So when your attention disappears, his inner balance breaks. He needs something from you, a correction, a sneer, a challenge, anything that confirms impact. When none comes, he starts manufacturing more noise. This is where the collapse speeds up. He reveals too much because the silence feels unbearable. There is another layer to the power of silence that most people miss. Silence is not just withdrawal, it is contrast. In a room full of over-explaining people, the still one looks expensive. In a room full of emotional leakage, the contained one looks powerful. In a room full of insecure performances, the person who does not compete appears higher in rank without announcing it. This is pure power dynamics. You stop trying to win the argument and start winning the atmosphere. And atmosphere decides more than facts ever will. Machiavelli would recognize this immediately. He would tell you that public life is theater, and theater rewards the one who controls frame, not the one who spends himself proving every point. That is why your old habit had to die. You were entering every theater as a debater. You now enter as an architect. You shape the room through restraint. You redirect outcomes through silence. You refuse to become equal with those who only know how to shout. Do not make one critical mistake when the fool finally realizes he is wrong. Do not pounce. Do not lecture. Do not collect trophies. Do this instead. When the fool starts collapsing, disappear from the collapse. That is the final discipline. Many people succeed with silence, then ruin the result by gloating. They cannot resist the final twist of the knife. They smile. They add one sharp sentence. They make sure everyone knows they saw it coming. And in that moment, they descend again. Why? Because they turn a natural exposure into a personal duel. They give the fool a last gift, an enemy to blame. Do not give that gift. When reality corrects someone for you, step aside and let the lesson land without your signature on it. This is the cleanest form of manipulation defense because it leaves no opening for retaliation. They cannot accuse you of humiliating them if you barely participated. They cannot frame you as cruel if all you did was remain composed. They cannot easily test you again because the room has already learned something dangerous about you. You are hard to hook. The moment you cross into this stage, you will feel a literal weight lift off your nervous system. You stop carrying every bad opinion like a personal assignment. You stop sprinting toward disorder. You stop treating your intellect like public utility. And because you are no longer available for every trivial battle, your mind becomes sharper where it matters. Your energy returns, your sleep improves, your face changes. You become less interrupted because people sense that bait does not work on you anymore. This is the final secret that ensures no one will ever try to test your intelligence the same way again. Your reputation changes before your words do. People begin to understand that you do not argue for status. You do not chase fools. You do not compete with noise. You let people reveal themselves, and because you are patient enough to watch, they rarely survive their own performance with dignity and tact. There is one exception, and it matters. When the stakes are safety, legal risk, irreversible damage, or someone vulnerable being harmed, silence is not strategy. Then you act with precision, not with ego, not with theatrics, with evidence, boundaries, and clean intervention. This is not about abandoning responsibility. This is about refusing pointless conflict while preserving force for moments that actually deserve it. Save your energy for consequences that matter. Save your voice for terrain worthy of your voice. Everything else is theater. The fool wants your mind because your mind gives his chaos shape. Deny him that. Deny him the emotional friction he feeds on. Deny him the rescue. Deny him the illusion that every room is his stage. This is dark psychology without corruption. This is Machiavellian strategy without mess. This is psychological warfare conducted through stillness, timing, and the quiet confidence to let gravity do what gravity always does. You were taught that intelligence proves itself by answering everything, but the mature form of intelligence knows something better. Not every mistake deserves correction. Not every clown deserves an audience. Not every fire deserves your lungs. Your greatest weakness in this game was actually your dormant weapon. You cared too much to let stupidity stand. Now you understand the tactical advantage your emotionally reactive competitors will never have. You can let it stand. You can let it spread just far enough to reveal itself, and then you can watch it collapse without spending a single extra drop of life. You began this as the frustrated arguer, the exhausted intellectual, the person dragged into every pointless contest by loud and incompetent people. Now you see the pattern. You were not losing because they were stronger. You were losing because you kept entering arenas beneath you. You kept mistaking correction for control. You kept saving fools from the failure they had earned. Now the frame is different. You do not lunge. You do not flinch. You do not tutor arrogance. You become the silent architect of ruin by refusing to interrupt it. Save your intellect for kings. Let the jesters entertain themselves. Type "let them sink" in the comments. If you are done rescuing the reckless, done donating your mind to noise, and ready to live above the argument, subscribe and stand with the few who understand that real power is not louder speech, but cleaner restraint. This is for people who are finished being emotionally conscripted by chaos. This is for people building internal empires, not public tantrums. This is where dark psychology becomes self-command, where manipulation defense becomes instinct, where the power of silence becomes a visible force in every room you enter. Join that alliance. Most people will never understand why this works. They will only feel the effect. To become so emotionally untouchable that nothing phases you, click the video on screen. Do not stop here. The next lesson is the shield that makes this one permanent. See what others miss. Know what others fear. Become who others can't.